Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm Stephen Wallace. I work as an agile consultant, focusing on organizational design. And within that, we do a lot of change management things. And yeah, we're here to try and share some good practices and hopefully inform people of some ways that they can improve how they make changes. And I'm here with my colleague and enemy, sorry, friend, Danny.
Welcome. Yeah, my name is Daniel Terrain. Agile consultant as well. Putting a small consultancy, try to improve. Actually, we forgot about putting the name of the company there. Just we missed that. Yeah, today is going to be just a talk about change management. That's something that we are living and experiencing in most of our the work that we do. So we would like to share some few concepts with you and have probably we can just learn something together today, and then maybe just have, if we manage to have some time at the end, just answer some questions if there is any.
Yep. Um, what we'd ask is, unless there's something very important or we haven't explained something well, which could happen, we'll have the chance at the end to answer some questions. We'll also ask you to interact at some stages during the session. And to do that, you'll just need either your mobile or a web page. So with that, let's go. So the objectives, what are we trying to do here? The first one is to help understand how changes can be introduced in organizations.
Probably we didn't prepare that enough. And the second one is actually helping understand how changes affect people involved.
Okay, so the first part, what we'd like you to do is you're sitting there, you haven't got your cameras on, that's fine, but we'd like you just to change something about your appearance. So either that can be just to, move your glasses slightly, or maybe you could put your collar up, or maybe, change something about your hair, or maybe unbutton something in your shirt. Just something, you're making a change in your physical appearance at the moment. Okay? And don't worry, we'll not ask you to send any photographs or turn videos on. We trust you. We think that you're going to make that change. Okay, so if you've done that, let's move on. So we're talking about the change environment. And here it's, where do the changes happen?
It's not only where do the changes happen, but who sort of again impacted with all these changes, right? So within our organization, sometimes the organizations are described as a group of people that are working together in order to achieve certain sort of results. And any change that you do on the organizations will have an impact on all these people, okay? And the way that in many occasions the change management theory refers to these people is the stakeholders. Okay, so the stakeholders of the actual changes. In here we are just grouping all the different people that might be impacted by any change. So you can have like the executive board members and sort of the SLT in many occasions, and there will be a group of people that is much more probably looking into the change from a different perspective than others, and within these board members they might be looking into more strategically what's the change going to bring to the organization, etc., etc. Then you have another group of people that might be like staff contractors and other like individual contributors that might be looking into the change from the perspective of, okay, how is this change affecting my day-to-day? Okay, well, how is this going to affect my relationships, or these kind of questions or perspective, let's say. And then you might have another group which might be the middle layers or middle management, if you want, people that is like managing a particular area or stream, that might be looking into, okay, how is this change going to impact my department, or the if you want the priorities I need to set, etc., etc. There's different groups and different perspectives into that you need to consider whenever you're talking about the change.
Okay. Also, we should be thinking about whenever we think about who's making these changes, who are the change leaders? And the leaders here, we're not talking about always the sponsors. We're talking about different people. And here we have people that would be in the local line leaders. And these would be people that are close to the change. They're going to be involved in mentoring. They're going to be there for the accountability and to have the sufficient authority to help make changes happen. Also, very important is we consider people who would be the internal networkers. These are the people that understand really well the company or the department where the change is happening. They're people that are able to spread their ideas through the networks that they have built. And then finally, you have the leadership level, the change agent that we may associate whenever we think of it. And this is the sponsor. And the sponsor, what we hope from a sponsor is that they're going to articulate the vision, why we're making these changes. They're going to help create some kind of alignment within the organizational strategy to the change. They will hopefully provide the resources, the time, money, effort, etc., to make the change happen. And also very important is they have to walk the talk. If they're asking for a change to happen, changes, it could be in terms of a process, it could be a new tool, it could be a new way of working. They have to be able to show that they have bought into that, because if not, it may be a little bit empty. So that's what we're looking for when we're talking about change leadership.
Before you move on, so linking, to too fast. Linking this to the previous slide, what we were saying about the stakeholders is pretty much all the people in the organization, and from that group of people, you might find you might create these other groups in order to lead the change. Let's say. Thanks, Stephen. Okay. Yeah, that might be something that I mean, I hope this is not surprising. So change is not linear. Okay. Sometimes when we refer to a change and when we start describing the change and this big organizational change, we think that change starts now, and then if you look into, you try to graph this change and the actions and the performance and the results of this change, you just only see, yeah, we'll keep doing actions and we'll making progress, always going up, and all the results, all these feelings will be great, etc., etc. And in reality, it's normally something much more like the image that we are seeing right now. So it will have ups and downs. Initially, we might start with a very a small group of people very excited in terms of the change, and they want to do plenty of things, full of energy. They are doing a lot of things. The feeling within that group is really good. At some point, they start facing some limitations of the organization or some constraints, and then the change starts delaying or stopping in terms of the progress. And then you might go down until something happens, that maybe there's a new group or someone else is incorporated to a group, new sponsors, or something happens that actually makes the change go up again. And this is something that happens every now and again, and sometimes the way that this is described is like the change are just following some certain sort of waves, and each wave will have their own specific characteristics and almost personality depending on the actions or the things that are happening.
Okay, so how can we help making those changes? And the best way to do that is to make them as easy as possible, that people can have visibility, that we have that communication, and that they feel involved. Okay, because one of the worst things that can happen is maybe, what's happening. People have said we're changing, but we don't know anything. So here we have some examples of how we can increase that invisibility, that involvement. We may have the example to the top left-hand corner, and the bottom right is the recent change that we had within IBS, the move to the Office 365. So there were constant, not constant emails, because also you can saturate people and it can be, oof, it's too much information. But if you find a good level of involvement in terms of this is the key messages, this is what's happening, this is a good way to help people understand, okay, this is where we are, this is the visibility. Other ways that you can do that is to have if when we get back to working in person, to have large town halls, or maybe at the department level, or maybe the lab level, etc., where you get people and you give them the message. They can have a forum where they can ask questions, etc., and feel comfortable that, okay, this is what is happening with the change. There are other examples, and here we have a couple of examples of visual indicators. So again, this could be if we're in the office, we can see visually what is happening with the change, because everybody is different. Some people, if you send an email, people will say, no, I don't remember that. If they're at a physical meeting and they're listening to things, they may take one or two lines. But so it's about adapting your message to try and make sure you get to the maximum number of people in different ways, not always just the same way of communicating, because everybody's different. And that leads us nicely into the individuals, because whenever we are making changes, we have to consider the individuals and how are people involved, affected by the change. And to do that, we're going to ask you to interact a little bit, and we're going to ask you to go to a webpage called menti.com. And whenever you are at menti.com, we just need to type in the code 61726005. Okay, this is the risky part of the webinar. It's like live TV or theater. We don't know what's going to happen. I'm just going to check Menti is working. That's the good thing. Okay. So it's menti.com. You use the code 61726005. And we're just going to ask you some questions. So do you remember near the start where I asked you to make a change, something in your appearance, maybe your glasses, your collar, your button, maybe something like that? So you either strongly disagree or strongly agree. What is happening? Did you change it back quickly? Have you already changed it? Or have you still got that change that you've made? How did you feel? Did it feel good from me asking you to change? Or did you sit and say, huh? Who's this guy who's asking me to change something? And then how did you feel whenever you made the change? Did it feel good? Okay, so I know we have about 30 more people that are on. Oh, here we go. There we go. Everybody's learning how to do Menti. Okay. I'll wait another. How many should we try to hope for, Danny? We've got 15 people that have answered. How many people should we hope for? I think maybe if we get one more, then oh, there we go. Two more. Fantastic. Okay, so just that small change. Most people actually changed it back quickly. And in terms of did it feel good, for me asking for the change, people are generally in the middle, but slightly more in the disagree. who are you to ask me to make a change? And then how did you actually feel making that change? It's in the middle, but it's slightly more to the disagree. We can see one person was very happy,
He was
probably. Oh,
actually
here we
looking forward. Yeah.
yeah. Some
Thanks.
people,
Thanks for suggesting that.
yeah. I didn't like my glasses like this. Thank you. I now feel a lot better. Okay, that's cool. Anything? Does it surprise you, Danny?
Not really, not really. Before we go back, we can keep using Menti, okay? So we'll keep going back, and I've sent the code and the website in the chat. But if anyone needs the link again, we'll just put it back. And regarding the question of the sentence, not really. So somehow this is actually. Well, that might be a surprise. So whenever we're describing the organizational change, is the same as I was describing it, like a straight line going up always and all this. So by considering the results, this might be wrong. Like there's no only one line, the different lines, even if there is ups and downs, right? Can you go back? So one thing that we always say is that consider individuals within the organizational changes and really the change. There are as many changes as people are affected by the change, and each of them will take the change differently.
And that leads us into a satire model. It's a change model that we'd like to share with you to show how people can accept the change. And here we have a graph. The vertical axis is about the performance of the person or the team, the department, and along the horizontal line, it's how they're reacting through the time. So if we start off, some process or some tool, it's in the late status quo element. The performance is going okay, but it's not great. And that's probably why the foreign element is being introduced. And whenever we introduce a foreign element, we come up with resistance. People may think, hey, that's a great idea, but it's different. It's not what I'm used to. So there's some resistance there from the person. And what that leads to is normally some chaos, especially at the start. A sensation of, okay, well, what do I have to do? I need to keep doing my job. You want me to use this new tool, but I have the old tool. I have customers speaking to me. I have this to do, etc. And it's a chaotic moment for people. People don't feel comfortable here. And hopefully what happens is that the transforming idea, the new way of working sets in, or the new tool is being used correctly. It's everything's finished, and hopefully from that point on, we begin to integrate the change into the way we're working. We're saying, okay, that moment has passed. We're improving, and through that integration, we reach a moment where it becomes the new way of working. Over time, that's the way that we work. And people may remember, oh, do you remember that we used to use Windows 95? It was completely rubbish. Nothing worked, etc. Oh, yeah, I can't. Whoa, that was an awful time. And it just becomes a new way of working. So that's the new status quo. Okay, so this is a normal kind of change kind of phases that we go through whenever we introduce changes.
And depending on the individual, there may be some people that go really quick, and it's very difficult to identify the different phases, and some other people that takes more time, and it really that's coming back to the previous sort of to the question in Menti. Some of you were feeling, yeah, great, thanks for asking me to change my glasses, and maybe this person went really fast, and some other people were like, yeah, but no, well, okay, I change it, but then as soon as I can, I'll go back to my previous state. They are so assuming that this is the actual case, there are different ways that you can keep introducing changes considering all the different sort of individual preferences and individual timings to go through the change, etc. One of the ways is actually using this model that's called ADKAR, that tries to cover different sort of aspects of any change that is introduced. First of all, it's considering the awareness. Okay, so it's very much related to the previous slide with the make it easy. So why are we doing this change? Do we need this change? I need to understand what's going on. Why are you asking me this? And try to understand again why is that necessary at this point. Then the second sort of perspective is desire, is trying to create desire on this particular person or all the people involved anyway. So what's in it for me? So if I change my glasses, what I'm gonna take, maybe I'll be more comfortable or less, or if I'm start using Microsoft Teams for calls instead of WebEx, for example, what am I getting? Is there any feature that will help me more? Then the other perspective is the knowledge. So if I'm starting using this new tool, how do I know to use it or not? Do I need some training? Because otherwise I might feel I may start like feeling too lost and I don't know how to continue. It will be difficult for me to accept it. Ability. So okay, I know I have the knowledge, I have this, I have the awareness, but I need to practice. Okay, so give me some space to practice. Give me some space in order to start adopting this new behavior or this new tool. And then the last one is reinforcement. Okay, so this is okay. Now we've done it. I feel pretty comfortable, but I want to go back to Windows 95 or to WebEx because it was easier for me. So you need to make sure that there are certain actions, certain things that help you to keep using or keep having the new habit.
Okay, so how long does it take to make a change? And here we're going to ask you to go back to Menti. Okay, so you should have Menti still open, hopefully. And we're going to ask you for another question. So I'll give you a chance to go back to Menti, your new favorite question app. And this question. So, how long does it normally take to make an important organizational change? Is it a couple of weeks, a couple of months, about a year, several years, or until the next one starts?
And just to use some big data, we're going to wait until we reach 17.
Okay. Hey, it's 18. What do we do now, Danny? It's 19.
The responses are coming really fast, so let's wait.
Okay, I think some people have their children beside them watching this, and they have their children open with the Mentimeter, and the children are just pressing buttons.
Yeah, things with colors and moving. Yeah, that's great.
This is how we do working from home. Yeah, the kids are looking, going, "Wow, I love your job, Mum or Dad."
Can you press again?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. 30 people. That's okay. What do you think, Danny? Some people we have a couple of weeks, a couple of months, about a year. We have the majority. Several years, about 5 people, and then 3 people that have maybe been burned by some changes that say it's until the next one starts.
I'm sure there is a competition between a couple of weeks and until the next one starts, and then the others are like averaging.
Oh, okay. Just as you said that, somebody else.
Ah, there you go. They wanted to win.
Okay, cool. So
So just trying to answer in this. Obviously, it depends, and that's not probably a not proper answer. It's a typical answer from a coach or a consultant. But the important thing here is it doesn't only depend on the actual organizational change. There might be when you were answering this, some of you might have in mind certain particular organizational change, maybe the Microsoft 365, and you were responding that with that in mind. But it only depends on the particular change. It also depends on when do you consider the change to be finished. And here we would like to differentiate a couple of things. So one, the change itself in here might be referring to the actual actions, or as he says, is the alteration of circumstances. So the actual things that are happening. So if you're changing the tool, the change is actually using the other tool, or if you're introducing a new behavior, is the actual new behavior. That's the change. And then the other thing is the transition, and the transition refers more on to when the different people impacted by the change will accept, will adopt the particular new behavior, new tool, and with that, whenever we get an enough or big enough number that represents the majority of the organization, and that would mean, or that would be used, that could be used in terms of considering the change is being finished. Okay, so one thing is the actual change, the actual actions that you're doing, and that they can even be planned, and you can just put something in the calendar. The other thing is when all the people that is involved will transition and will accept this change.
Yeah, and for us, one of the most common examples is the teams that begin working in Agile, and maybe they start to use Scrum, and they have sprints, and they can say, okay, yep, we're doing Agile. But it's possible that whenever we start digging into that, okay, so what's changed? And people may go, well, nothing's changed. There's no real difference. We're only doing everything every 3 weeks now rather than before. So that's an example of the difference between the transition hasn't happened, but the change. Okay, yep, we're doing agile, but people maybe haven't reached the level where they feel comfortable and they can see that and they can accept that change and the different way of working. Okay, some of the reasons maybe why. And here it's about learning. And whenever we love, as you can see, we love graphs with performance and time. And here it's how we learn to deal with changes. And as a person, a good example could be if you are used to driving an automatic car. An automatic car does not have a gear stick. You just put it into drive, reverse, park, neutral, that's it. So if you have learned how to drive in an automatic car, you may have an unconscious competence. You know how to do that. If you had to explain it, you don't really know. You just know how to drive an automatic car. But imagine if we say, okay, now you have to drive, we're going to buy you a new car, and it's a manual car, a manual gear stick. So you have to put it into first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. So suddenly you have the conscious incompetence, the second part, and your performance goes down. In terms of a car, hopefully it doesn't go down too much. But what happens is that you have to actually think about, you go, I don't know when to change the gear stick. I don't know when, if the revolution has to be 2000, 3000. I don't know, because before that always happened for you. But then over time, you learn and you start to realize that, okay, I have to change from second to third, doing that. Oh, I'm going up a hill. Maybe I have to go back from fifth to third, or maybe second, depends on the hill. And you start to be consciously competent. You start to realize when you have to make those changes. And you realize, yes, I'm improving. And then after a certain length of time, and here it could be weeks, it could be months, it could be years, you feel unconsciously competent again, and you just know how to drive a car with a manual gear stick. You don't have to think about it. You just come in, you go first, second, third, and you can drive. So this happens with all the changes whenever they're introduced. We go from the unconscious competence to realizing that we're incompetent, and then we go back, hopefully over time, whenever the new change has set in, and we feel comfortable using that change.
And this particular graph doesn't only represent what one individual goes through, but it's the whole organization. So this is, again, this section was about changing, right? So if we look at the ARCAD model, that there was knowledge and ability and all this. So once you've started with the change, you've started introducing certain things, the whole organization needs to learn and adapt to the new situation. Okay, so we need to be sure that this is understood and what things we can actually do in order to help the organization to move back to the unconscious competence.
Okay, and whenever change is introduced, normally we talk about the resistance to change. And what we'd like to offer is how about we think about the response to change rather than resistance? Because it's a natural response of people whenever change is introduced to have a different answer, to have a different way of responding. And here we've kind of grouped it into three areas. There are three areas of challenges. And here we can have the challenges of the redesigning and rethinking. So this is at the very start whenever we say, okay, this is the new way that we have to work. This is the new tool that we're going to have to do. Some of the challenges can come in governance. People can say, okay, you've introduced this new, who's in charge of this? Why are we doing this? You can have some people, whenever we're doing the change, that they say, okay, they keep reinventing the wheel. It changes constantly, and that can affect your message and how you diffuse this message of why we're doing the change. And also you're going to have people asking the questions, where are we going? How does this fit in with our strategy? What is the purpose of this? This is at the start of initiating, redesigning and rethinking the change. Whenever you actually initiate and you make the change begin to happen, you're going to have people say, listen, I have work to do. I don't have time to do this. You're also going to have some people maybe saying, okay, you want me to work with a new tool or a new way, but nobody has taught me. I've had no training. Nobody's coaching or supporting me. They just expect me to work like this or with this new tool. People are going to go, I need help. Other people may say, this isn't really relevant. I don't really understand why this is relevant. No, not at all. And others are going to say, yeah, they tell us we have to work this way, but yeah, they're not walking the talk. And then you may have some challenges whenever you're actually sustaining or trying to sustain the change. People can feel with some fear, anxiety, thinking, this stuff is scary. This is a new way of working. This is not what I'm used to in my past 5-10 years of my career. This is scary. And other people may think about how we assess, how we measure things. The way that we assess and measure may change, and they may think this isn't working. The way that I normally measured my performance or the way that I assessed things working, it's not the same anymore. So it's not working. And then you may also have different groups of people that are very for the change and people that are against the change. And it's almost like a cult. You have the true believers, non-believers, and people, we have the right way. This is the right way to work. And then the other people say, no, they don't understand this. So these are normal responses that can happen in different phases whenever you're creating changes.
And here we just only highlighting the actual responses, but there are many different strategies to overcome the different responses that you can that you're getting, and pretty much focused on the different sort of again responses. So maybe for there are certain strategies for when the response is about not enough time, some others for coaching and support, etc., etc. But here, what we wanted to point out was just trying to be like empathetic with yourself first. Like maybe I'm just this is the response that I'm providing to this particular change, and that helps you to reflect or maybe you can see this in others, and then you might think, okay, that might help you to understand, okay, what this person is experiencing at the moment, or what's the experience of this person towards the change.
So here we have to consider the individuals, and we're talking about, how are people engaged with the change?
So as you can see, we've started talking about the change itself, like putting some context in terms of what the change is, and then we move quickly to the people that is actually impacted and how the people is impacted with the change. And in order to continue with that, we also would like to talk about how the different, again, grouping people, simplifying the reality that we know that it's always much more complex. Different groups will be moved or will be influenced or helped whenever the change is happening differently by different people. Okay, so in here we can see a couple of models. One is talking about movers, movables, immovables, and you can see the change might generate certain resistance depending on the group. The movers will be offering less resistance because probably they believe more in the change. They think that that's good and that's what they've been looking forward. Like the one that voted the glasses. Thanks for suggesting this. I was just, yeah, great idea. I want to do it. Then we have another group that's like movables that probably, if they speak to these people that they've started changing their glasses, they can understand, okay, yeah, I see the point, and I'm going to change them as well. And then you have another group that it's like identified as the movables. And this group might not be like help if they are speaking to movers, because they see that maybe they are far too optimistic and yeah, everything is great in your mind, but in my reality this is really impossible. I cannot change my classes because I really like the way that they are, and otherwise I won't be able to see the face of these two, talking about change management. So that's the important thing here, is just trying to identify who can help the other people in the other teams.
And here, if we go to the other graph, which is the Rogers adoption curve, we have the people, as Danny mentioned, the innovators, the people that are happy to do those changes, the early, late majority, and then the laggards. And to add to that part is, it's possible that the laggards never change. It's possible that they don't want this change, and they may resist until the very, very end, until there's actually no other option but to go for that change. And if they can, maybe they just decide not to make that change. But that's completely normal. And it's just to try and identify where the people are. And if you ask Danny and myself, we enjoy, or we like the first model that Danny mentioned about the movers, the movables, immovables, and the way that people can help create the change in others. And it's not just from one person. Okay, so there's some engagement principles that we'd like to introduce when we're thinking about the stakeholders. So here, the first principle is that you can forget about important stakeholders, but they will not forget you.
Okay. Second principle, and remember, stakeholders is everyone that is affected by the change. So second principle, the identification is a continuous practice. New stakeholders emerge during a change, all ones can fade away. So it's just, you just don't do this once, but you keep doing it repeatedly.
The third one is the prioritizing and segmenting stakeholders is in a moment in time. That's like a photograph. This is what we're taking at the moment. We should be regularly reprioritizing as time moves on and things can change.
Fourth, we've just mentioned it, some stakeholders are best engaged by others. So whenever you're planning to do things, and this is again when the change is actually happening, or any stage within the change, you can consider, okay, which are the stakeholders I'm actually looking into, or what's the action trying to help, which is the group that the action is trying to help. So depending on that, I might choose one group to do it, or maybe another group, etc.
The fifth principle is important to seek first to understand why the situation is there, and then to be understood. So understand why the people do the things that they do or use the tool that they do, and then afterwards try and help the others understand you.
Sixth, emotion trumps reason. Depending on first of all, if we go back to the satir model, that curve change, sometimes we don't really realize where we are at this point, and we are not conscious about it. So if we are explained and logically argued that certain things are more beneficial, etc. Yes, I see what your point, but I don't want to do it. So there is some sort of emotion factor that you need to also tackle.
And then finally, demonstrating something trumps the argument. We may have the best arguments in the world, but if we don't demonstrate it, we may not get people to respond to the change the way we want to. So try and focus more on the demonstration rather than arguing. Okay, so how do we know where you are? How can we understand how the change is progressing?
Coming back to the definition that they gave about an organization. Organization is a group of people that is working together. So we could apply the same as it's not only a group of people, but it's a group of people, structures, processes, and many different things are actually interacting and helping the organization to produce certain results and achieve certain benefits. Okay, so whenever we're looking into introducing a change, or we're looking into doing certain actions, taking certain actions within one change, we need to consider all the different aspects of the organization and how they are affected. If we can introduce some change in the structure, we need to see if that change might have an impact in what the people is expecting, what the people is motivated with, or maybe any kind of process that needs to be changed, etc., etc. And you might feel you might be starting certain things that might have an impact on a positive impact on the particular area that you've identified, but you also need to look into other areas that might be impacted. So, to understand if the change is progressing well or not.
And one way of actually checking if those changes, how they're affecting, is to do something that comes from the lean world, which is the Gemba walk. And this was talked about in the Toyota production system, where instead of managing the team or the process or the department by Excels, by pure numbers, you actually go to where the action is, to go where the value is. So that means sometimes to get close to the team and understand what is happening. It means to stop looking at maybe just your metrics, but actually get close and understand how the process is happening. Is the value moving? Record what those statements are, and then do some follow-up. So basically get close to where the value is happening, and don't just stay with some reports, whether it's Excels, etc. That's just one way of actually helping.
And then this links very well to the change leadership that Stephen was mentioning at the beginning, that we had different groups like the local line managers, I think, then the interconnectors, the sponsors. So the change is impacting everyone, and everyone should be looking or helping, maybe a representation of everyone rather than everyone, just helping to understand if the change is actually helping and progressing, and if not, just trying to do something about it.
Go back to Minty, and we'll ask you a final question. What takeaways, if any, have you taken from the session? So we've talked for about 45 minutes on different models taking into account of individuals, etc., how we manage change. Is there anything that is stuck in your head? And within Mindy, I think you have the option just to add a couple of words. So just think of the main aspects. You don't have to write a sentence. Anything that after this, if somebody says, oh, what was that webinar like? Or what did you learn or anything? If you'd just like to leave that there, that would be great.
Good. I was waiting for Mike Tyson to be there. I'm glad.
Cool. That's great. Okay. Thanks very much for the participation. As we see, it's grown there. We've got to 17 people, Danny. What you said, that's our limit.
Well, the expectations now were 33, so.
Yeah, but their children have probably got bored. You know, they were looking at the colors moving up and down, and this isn't just as cool. This is a word cloud. It's definitely not as cool. So, yeah. Okay, with that, thank you for your time. Thanks for the questions. If there's anything else, please feel free to reach out to Danny. He'll answer all the questions. I'll also try and answer if you have any.
I'll forward the questions to Stephen as well. Yeah.